Welcome to Wisdom Journey. I'm your host, Wisdom Okonkwo. Today's guest is Marty M. Fahncke, a world-class marketer with over 30 years growing and scaling businesses and 20 years in M&A. He's helped companies reach over $1 billion in revenue and close more than $450 million in transactions. We'll dive into strategies to double your revenue without selling more stuff, the right time and reasons to sell your business, succession planning, and many others. One of the things in buying or selling a business is valuation, right? So I'd love for you to explain and kind of walk us through how to value a business.
Well, that's one of the most complex answers there are. So it's an interesting one to start with. It's the number one question that business owners ask, and it's one of the most complex answers there are because there isn't any one way to value a business. Unlike, say, like real estate, you can do called comps or comparisons and say, this house with 3 bedrooms and 1 bath is similar to the one next door that sold for X amount of money, and so you can kind of compare them. Businesses are much different, and so they can be valued on any number of things, including cash flow, revenue, value of intellectual property, the operations of the business, whether or not if it's a small business, whether or not the owner is critical to the business or not. And so there are literally over 1,000 different ways and different things to look at when valuing a business. In general, though, businesses are going to be valued on a multiple of their revenue. If they're going to be sold as a as a multiple of their profit, not of their revenue. There's a misconception of that businesses are valued on revenue, but really they're valued on profit. And then another valuation is the value of assets to a potential acquirer. Assets could be protected intellectual property like patents and trademarks. Or in the case of content businesses, sometimes assets can be traffic or a captive audience, even if there isn't necessarily a substantial amount of profit for that. If it's the right audience, a potential acquirer may ascribe value to it. So there's not any one way of defining value of a business and what a business is worth. When you go and look at the dictionary definition of value, it's, what is a seller willing to sell for and what is a buyer willing to pay? And it's a very elementary, very fundamental definition of value, but that's truly what comes into play when valuing a business. Because if you have built something, let's say as a content creator, you built something with a very dedicated, valuable audience that is very sticky and responsive, and it's an audience that somebody will pay a lot of money to reach that audience, then it has more value than, say, somebody who built an audience through mechanical means or some sort of automated means, and they may have the same number of followers or the same number of viewers, but if the audience isn't as quality, then they're going to have much less value. So the key thing is to have a good quality business practices, good quality audience, and preferably profits from the revenue that you're generating, and those will help your business be valued much higher than if you don't have them.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Earlier on, you mentioned that businesses are valued by multiples of their profit. For me, the question I'm asking is what determines what the multiple is? Certain businesses, they have these 20x, 40x multiples, while others, they are like 5x multiples. What determines it?
So what determines it is the industry sector can determine that. So there are thousands of different business classifications, and different businesses have different multiples that are going for. So you might have, for example, trades businesses like plumbers and electricians and carpenters and construction, things like that are very labor intensive. Those might trade at a 2 or 3 times multiple, where like a software business with a recurring revenue, so SaaS businesses is something that we do a lot of work in, software as a service. So those have much higher multiples because they don't require a lot of effort to deliver the product or service that's given, and the billing is automatically recurring on a credit card. And so those are considered to be very sticky kind of businesses, and those valuations can be much, much higher. So you might see those selling at, 7 or 10 or 12 multiple. There's also something called multiples arbitrage, meaning that the valuations are different or the multiples are different depending on the size of the business. So businesses that are small, entrepreneurial businesses that might have, be owner operated, they're going to trade for much lower multiples, down in the, 2, 3, 4 multiples, versus businesses that are much larger, have a full operating team. They run autonomously, and they're going to be more attractive to purchasers like private equity firms and things like that. Those are going to have a much higher multiple. So the bigger your business, the higher the multiple is most likely to be. And then this business sector that you're in is also going to impact the multiple. Again, there's literally millions of variations of that.
Yeah. There's one of the terms that I saw, and yeah, I'd love for you to explain it. It's called EBITDA, something like that.
EBITDA, yeah. EBITDA is earnings before interest, taxes, and depreciation and amortization. So that's basically for a business to define its net profit before taxes. We do a lot of international transactions, mergers and acquisitions transactions. So EBITDA is a really nice number for us because different countries tax businesses at different rates. And so if somebody's looking to buy a business, they want to know what's the profitability of that business where they are. So if I'm selling an e-commerce business that's located in the EU, for example, and somebody in Canada is buying that business, well, they're going to have completely different tax structures, right? But the business itself fundamentally has the same numbers. It's going to sell the same product for the same price. It's going to have the same cost of product, so its gross profit should be the same, and its net profit theoretically should be very, very similar. But where it starts to get different is obviously on taxes and depreciation and some of those different things. So calculating the profit of the business before, which is earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, et cetera, allows you to compare apples to apples across different jurisdictions. It's generally used for larger businesses. EBITDA is going to come into play for more multi-million-dollar businesses. Smaller businesses generally tend to be valued what's on called SDE, or seller's discretionary earnings, and what that means is basically the total compensation that the owner of the business gets in a year. So that would include the salary of the owner, any dividends or draws, any personally beneficial compensation like health insurance or personal travel expenses, personal automobile expenses, etc., and then any profit that's left over. And so SDE, or seller's discretionary earnings, is more likely to be used than EBITDA in a business that's under, let's say, $2 million in annual revenues.
Yeah. One of most creators, they don't really approach their business, their stuff they do as business per se. But for me, the question I want to ask is, what are some things one could put in a business to ensure that the multiple is higher, the valuation is higher, even though they might or might not sell the business?
Yeah, so ways to make the business worth more. There's a couple of different things. So first of all, you need to work on not having yourself as the owner be integral to the business or critical to the business. So going back to, say, like those trades businesses that I was talking about, like a plumber or a contractor, a construction, something like that. If a plumbing business, if a plumber has a business and they are the business, right? Somebody calls and says, I have a leak in my plumbing, please come fix it. And the plumber goes to fix it, and they are the business. That business has very little to no value whatsoever, because without them, there is no business. So people aren't going to pay a high multiple for that business. They're going to pay a very low multiple, maybe just to acquire a client list, maybe to acquire some assets like the van or the tools, but it has very low value. Whereas if that plumber grows that business so that he has 2 or 3 plumbers who work for him, and he doesn't have to be on the job every single day, then all of a sudden it becomes exponentially more valuable. In the content space, it's very similar. If your content business relies solely on you to operate it, and if you take a day off, the wheels aren't turning and the money's not coming in, that is a business that has very little value if you tried to sell it. So you need to create content that or have a business that is creating content without you present, meaning, you need to have copywriters and video editors and marketers and a staff of people, that the business is continuing to operate profitably without your presence being needed every single day. And that's a business that has value because somebody can buy it and run it and operate it without you there. Content businesses that are very personality based and named after the person who is providing the content and really very much based on their personality are notoriously difficult to sell because, again, it's based on a person, and that's very difficult to transfer that business to another person. One big example of that of someone who did it successfully was Tony Robbins, the very successful motivational speaker who's had, a 30, 40-year long career and built an entire business out of, motivation and, books and audios and videos and live seminars and the whole thing, multi-million-dollar business. But it was named the Tony Robbins Company, right? And so when Tony was starting to look at, well, how do I, create value for this thing and so I can eventually retire, he realized that he needed to be able to duplicate himself. So he spent a lot more time creating memberships and creating programs that could run without him, and recordings and creating other coaches and mentors in his program who can actually do the work without him needing to be present. And he was eventually able to successfully sell that business to another party who bought the business. And so now the Tony Robbins Company is actually not owned by Tony Robbins. He still is a spokesperson for it. He still has ways of generating revenue from it, even though he's officially sold it. But that's an example of somebody who was able to make it work even with their name still attached to it. But it required a massive amount of work to create a consistent, strong business behind the scenes that was generating a large amount of revenue and profit, even without Tony's involvement. So if you as a content creator want to create something that has value, you've got to have it be operationally free from your daily need to be involved in it, and preferably free from having your name directly attached to it, so that if somebody else was to become the new face of it, it doesn't disrupt the trust that you've built with your audience.
Yeah. I mean, that's like one of the biggest struggle all creators faces, especially if it's a personal business. Like, how do they sell or exit their business such that they can remove themselves, because it's particularly difficult considering the ones who create content for their brand, and they're more like the keep core value of the content.
Yeah, it's not an easy transition to make. Generally, you do it by bringing on other content creators to be, so you kind of spread around the visibility, spread around the face of the business to other people who can continue to carry on with the business even after you're gone. Things like that can extricate you from being the 24/7 face of the business.
Yeah. Okay. One of the things you talk about when it comes to exiting is, you say the timing matters a lot, and you talk about market cycles and all that. Can you explain what you mean by the timing and some of the terminologies behind all those things?
Well, more important than market cycles, I mean, there are ups and downs to the acquisitions market, and there are times when things are a little better and times when things are a little rougher. Trying to time a market cycle is almost impossible. It's like trying to time the market cycle of the stock market. What I look at more is the cycle of the business, and this is the mistake I see people make more than anything. So there's an old investment saying that's been around for I don't know how long, but it's buy low and sell high, right? If you buy stock when it's low and sell it when it's high, you're going to make money. If you buy real estate when it's low and you sell it when it's high, you're going to make money. Everybody knows that particular saying. It's a very fundamental, easy, basic to understand saying. What's interesting to me is that entrepreneurs and business owners have a tendency to do the exact opposite. They have a tendency to start a business. They maybe struggle for the first couple of years, and then they finally start to make it. And then when they're really doing really, really well and the money's flowing in like crazy, they've figured everything out, they've dialed everything in, revenue's coming in, profits are coming in. That's when you should start thinking about exiting your business. Unfortunately, most business owners don't. They think that's the summit, they think that they can continue to do better, and many times they don't. Businesses have cycles, ups and downs and ups and downs. Even ones that are overall on an upward trajectory, they'll have down cycles in that upward trajectory. And what I find fascinating is when a business owner has a business that's doing really, really well, and you say, hey, now'd be a great time to sell that business. They say, well, why would I sell it? It's doing so great.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, many times a year later, something has happened and the business is not doing that great. And that's when they finally come to somebody like me and say, oh, I think I need to sell my business. I'm burned out. I can't, I've hit a ceiling. I can't figure out how to grow it from here. Now I want to sell it now. And now the valuations drop dramatically because they've taken their eye off the ball, they've gotten burned out, those sorts of things. And so the business might be down 20, 30, 40% from its peak. And that's when they finally decide to sell. And unfortunately, oftentimes that slide continues even while it's on the market and beyond. And then what happens is buyers see that and they go, well, I don't want to buy a business that's on the decline. So then it's even harder to sell even once you put it on the market. So more important than market cycles are business cycles. Sell your business when it's up. Sell your business when things are going really, really well, because buyers want to buy a thriving, prosperous business, and they don't want to buy a business that's hit a wall or has problems and is struggling to make ends meet. And if they do buy it, they're going to pay you pennies on the dollar. But unfortunately, that's when most business owners think about selling. So be smart and sell when it's on the way up and not on the way down.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Yeah. I like the idea of like being intentional about the sales process and not just looking at trying to wait for when things crash before you decide to sell. Instead, looking at things before ahead of time, so some of the fluctuations to encounter.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's another benefit to having your business ready to be sold at all times. So if you do all the steps needed to have your business interesting to a buyer, meaning you have a team in place, you have an operating system in place, you as the owner aren't having to work 60 hours a week to keep the business afloat, the business is profitable, your financials are in order, et cetera. If all of those things are in place, which are the things that you need to have in place for a buyer to be interested in buying your business, even if you don't sell your business, guess what? If all those things are in place, your business is a joy to run. You as the current owner, you're making more money and working less time and energy in the business than you would otherwise. So always having your business prepared and ready to sell, even if you never sell it, is a smart idea for everyone.
Yeah. I like preparation, meeting opportunity, such that you put things in place when it usually comes to the valuation. The business is valued at a very high price, and yeah, it's also good for keeping the business too. Earlier on, you talked about how the dependency, if you could find a way to reduce the dependency on the creator, that itself will increase the multiple of the business. Yeah.
Was there a question there? Or?
No.
Okay.
It's just a follow up. I don't know how familiar you are with the content business equivalent, right? And what I will explain now is that for the content business, there are so many approaches and so many ways one could take the business. Like one could create a course, right? A series of courses or series of coaching, or one could create a direct physical product linked with the course. Like the idea just varies, right?
Right. Yeah. I'm very
Yeah.
familiar with content businesses. I've actually bought and sold a number of content businesses of
Okay.
all sorts. So we've done everything from, traffic, high traffic, employment, newsletter businesses to affiliate businesses to sponsored newsletter businesses, you know, blogs, podcasts, you name it, and they all have different ways of monetizing. They all have different ways of generating their traffic. But all of them, the one thing that's the same across all of them from a standpoint of valuation and acquisitions is you've got to have revenue, you got to have profit, and you've got to have systems in place that don't make it completely reliant upon the content creator to continue to create that content. You need to have other ways of creating the content. If you have those things, then you've got a business that has value.
Yeah. Now, I'm so happy that you understand the content business. If I was to say, let's say I started a local media company, right? Not necessarily the news outlet or so, but a local media company that has a podcast, a newsletter, and yeah, for newsletter, I find that it's really easy to replace, because then you just have to get people to write, and as long as they understand the writing style, they can deliver on the newsletter. But out of the podcast and maybe the YouTube channel and stuff like that, it will usually involve someone being on video, and especially when the creator is just starting out, get to be the one on the video. So what could the process be like if someone wanted to create a local media business, such that of course, they will be the key person of influence, but then the business is quite different from them, such that it's easier to sell from day one?
Well, yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, like a newsletter business, if it's topic specific versus personality specific. We've been involved in newsletter businesses in health and wellness. We've done newsletter businesses in business opportunity, investments, marketing, business growth, all sorts of different types of subjects like that. So, making it so that you have contributing content providers, keeping the brand so that it's not, one individual person behind the brand. You can still have, drive like a newsletter type of business. You can still drive that with the video, audio, podcasts, things like that. Just don't have it be all one person. So if you have 10 or 12 contributing writers for your newsletter, have those same 10 or 12 people creating videos for the articles they've written and creating and going on podcasts and talking about those articles, so that it's not all one person as the content creator. You have everybody on the team as content creators, and then that will solve the problem we were talking about of making sure that the primary owner of the business or the primary content creator isn't dependent to do all of the work.
Yeah, I tend to understand where the importance of having the business not solely dependent on the owner, because at that point in time, it makes it really easy to change ownership without having to affect the business.
Exactly. Yeah. We see as far as kind of local businesses, we see a lot of like Facebook groups and meetup groups that are very geographic specific that can be acquired. Facebook groups that started out as maybe just a community group for a very specific community, and somebody's taken the time and energy to curate that group, to grow it, to moderate it, to make sure that people are active in it and engaged. Something like that has value. People will buy a local group. Same thing with a meetup group. We have a business partner that has. I think they own over 100 different meetup groups, and they've acquired them all. They've purchased them for people who have built up meetup groups about in different geography, and so they have the ones that are business oriented in specific countries, and they have like women business owners of Canada and women business owners of India. Have AI groups, so they have AI business owners in this geographic area, et cetera. They've found people who've built out these niche groups in a very specific interest and a very specific geography, and they've created value, and then been bought by our client who's been buying up these groups because they're aggregating them all together into one big super group. So there's definitely potential to build a geographically local business, content business, especially if you can come up with a topic that's specific of interest to geographic location, and get people engaged, provide great content, and then add value from there.
Yeah, it's one of the things in the industry is the roll up strategy.
Roll-ups, yep.
Yeah, and some of the things you talked about is getting to buy a Facebook group and meetups, and that's really an incredible idea, honestly.
Yeah, it's very common. One of my very first in acquisitions on my own was actually a LinkedIn group that I in a very specific niche. It had about 10,000 members when I acquired it, and I took it over. I figured out how to monetize it. I rolled the profits back into it. It's now over 30,000 members, and provides a very steady income for me every single month. And it has I don't my face isn't on it really at all. That's all user generated content. The actual users keep the content alive and keep all the posts and everything else. And that's a LinkedIn group that's I bought very, very cheap, grew very nicely, and now it's worth it's worth a really nice amount of money if I ever wanted to sell it, which I don't because it's providing me monthly income with hardly any work at all. But
Yeah,
there's all sorts of niches out there like that, and finding content that's interesting to the right audience, and then finding advertisers and affiliates who are willing to pay to reach that audience can be very, very valuable.
yeah. What would you say is the content business equivalent of a 10K report?
Say that again.
So what's the content business equivalent of the 10K report?
Of the what report?
The 10K report.
10 key reports.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is that what metrics should creators like track to gauge exit readiness?
Oh, the key metrics.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, audience size, audience engagement, um, revenue per, revenue per. Depending on what kind of business it is, if it's membership or if it's more traffic driven, but revenue per visitor, revenue per member, revenue per whatever the metric is that it's applicable to the business, obviously. And then your cost per acquisition versus your lifetime value. So if it costs you $1 to acquire a new visitor or a new member or whatever, but the lifetime value of that is say $5, that's a huge profit, right? It costs you $1 to bring them in, then you make $5 on them over the lifetime. You're gonna want to look at that. So the LTV, lifetime value, the CAC, cost per acquisition, cost per customer acquisition. Those are some different metrics you want to look at. You're going to want to look at the stickiness of engagement. So like if it's a subscriber business with paid subscribers, what's their retention rate or their churn rate? Do they sign up for 1 month or 2 months and then they're out of there? Well, that's not as valuable. Do they sign up for a year and stick around for at least a year? That's hugely valuable to a buyer. So the stickiness, the churn rates, those types of things are very, very critical. Those are just a few of the metrics off the top of my head.
Yeah. Well, what's when it comes to buying business or evaluating business, what's like the metric people overhyped that is not necessarily that important?
What metrics are not that important?
It's more like an overhyped metrics that's not as important as people make it seem.
The most overhyped metric is multiple of revenue. People who own businesses and are thinking about selling them all often seem to think that their business is going to be valued on a multiple of revenue. And almost no buyers are ever going to evaluate a business on a multiple of revenue. And that's the biggest disconnect we see in the space.
Well, now that you say it, it seems basic. That's because every business is looking to make profits, not necessarily revenue. Oh, yeah.
Profits is where it's at.
Yeah. Can you share some of earlier on you made a hint when you were explaining how you've worked with newsletter business and stuff like that. Can you share some of the kind of like local, not necessarily local media business, but kind of like the creator business you've seen exit and how like their exit has been really, really successful, and kind of like point out some of the reasons why that was the case.
Yeah, absolutely. So one that comes to mind is a job board it was a content business that was primarily content for Gen Z job seekers. and it was they provided a lot of content about how to find a job that suits Gen Z, how to negotiate for salaries, how just all this content that was interesting to Gen Z. Well, as a business, it did okay for on advertising and things like that. But where the value was in that business is that they had a very high amount of traffic. They were able to by providing really really good solid content. They were getting over 1 million visitors a month, and they were able to find an acquirer who was a job board, a famous job board. Actually, I can't say the name, but you'd know it if I said it. Who was looking to attract more credibility with that audience. So they basically were buying the eyeballs. They were buying that traffic and then converting them into job seekers who were signing up to pay to find jobs. And what was interesting is we were able to put together a study and say, hey, on average, you're paying on average, say $3 for every new job seeker that you're bringing to your website right now. You're paying $3 for that to Google, to Meta, Facebook. That's your ad cost. And so this business had, like I said, like 1 million visitors a month. And so we were able to say, look, instead of paying $3 a visitor to Google, here's 1 million visitors right here. So it would be $3 million if you were to buy this same traffic from Google or from Meta. But why don't you just buy and own this website for $1 million, and then you own it and you can keep and so in a year you'll have 12 million visitors. So for the cost, for the fraction of the cost you'd pay to rent traffic, you can own the traffic. And that was hugely appealing. And so that was one example of a deal that could make good sense. We also do a lot of work in the affiliate marketing space. So we have done business with affiliate businesses, content businesses in lots of different categories. So the baby space is actually really huge. People spend ungodly amounts of money on baby items, strollers and blankets and toys and cribs and car seats and all the things like that. So, we do a lot of work in the baby space and in content sites around that, and those are very strongly monetizable because people need that stuff and they need it now. And so that's a great niche to be in. We've done work in sporting goods. There's been times, it's funny when certain times in history when kind of like prepper type materials are super super popular, food storage and things like that. We've done well there. It's also a category that does really well with content because people want to consume content on how to grow their own food and self-defense and home defense and things like that. So those are just some different categories. We honestly haven't done a whole lot in the local space. Our where we've seen success is in the verticals or niches versus geographic isolation, more vertical and niche isolation. But if you can find a niche that has a passionate base of people who want to know more about that particular topic, and if you can write and create good content around that and get them to come and consume your content, then that's a business that's going to have value. You can start to generate revenue from it and start to have profit from it, and then your business is going to have value.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Like you just break down, right? The creator. There's this quote I saw. It's like you're not just a creator, you're a CEO. Start acting like one.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I love the way you broke every, sometimes it's hard to sell business because we ourselves don't even understand how the business connects and makes money, because like the traffic generating website now, when you understand, okay, this is how much it costs them to get a customer, now we could just sell it for so and amount. It makes sense, and they themselves they can make sense of the deal and say, yeah, this thing is worth it or this thing is not worth it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's something that somebody like a smart acquisitions advisor can help figure out, where's the value of the business to a buyer, like I said. So one buyer may look to that business, say it has no value whatsoever because it's generating almost no revenue. But another buyer who's going, I don't care that it's not generating a lot of revenue. I need that exact niche of people who are wanting to consume that exact piece of content, and I'm willing to pay to get them. Then that's where some value can come in.
Yeah. Over the course of your of being a podcast guest, what's a question you wish people ask you more of regarding buying and selling businesses?
What's the question people ask me most about buying and selling businesses?
No, what's the question you wish people would ask you more of?
Wish people would ask me more. Actually, you already asked some of the really most important questions. How is a value of a business determined? That's a super important question that people get wrong so often. And so I appreciate that you asked that, and I was able to share how that's factored with focus on profits and not revenues so much. And then how to prepare the business for sale. And what kind of steps to take, which you asked me. So I think honestly, you've done a really great job of asking the right questions that your audience needs to really, really know. I guess the only other thing I would say that I would add is, if you're thinking about selling your business, you want to plan and prepare as far in advance as possible. The other big mistake I see business owners make is they decide to, okay, I want to sell my business, and then they call us up and they say, I want to sell, I'm ready to sell, I've got this other venture I want to do, or I'm burned out, or whatever the reasons are for selling. A lot of times it's a partnership gone bad. And they say, I want to sell, and so I'm ready to put on the market right now. And that's a huge mistake. You want to prepare your business as far in advance as possible. And so probably the other thing that the question that you didn't ask, which would be, how far in advance should you prepare your business to sell if you're thinking about selling it? And the honest answer is 3 years, which seems like a very long time for some businesses that are, maybe they're only a year old. But if they're been around for a little bit. Now, does that mean that, if you want to sell in 3 months, that you're out of luck? No, it doesn't mean that. It means that it's going to be tougher to sell, and it may sell for less money than you hoped, and it may take a little bit longer through the sales process than you'd hoped. But it may still be able to be done. But if you had prepared at least a year in advance or 2 years in advance, or if you're really a forward visionary, from the day you start your business, you should be preparing for the exit. And even years in advance. So the further in advance you plan and prepare and take the steps, the more successful your exit's going to be. And like I said, I recommend 3 years. And the reason I recommend 3 years is because at scale, businesses that are true businesses that are ready for acquisition, there's what's called a 3-year look back is pretty much the standard in the industry. A buyer is going to look at 3 years of your profit and loss statements, 3 years of your balance sheets, 3 years of your tax returns, and to determine final valuation. And so if you started preparing 3 years ago, all of that is going to look great. But if you only started preparing 6 months ago, then you're going to have 2.5 years of not great financials and not great operations and 6 months of good operations. And that's going to be a tougher sell than if you had been preparing 3 years in advance.
Yeah. I know earlier on we did make mention of it. Well, say I was starting a business and I have the intention to prepare my business 5 years in advance. What are the key couple of things I'll put in place immediately I'm starting the business?
All the stuff we talked about. Have an operating system in place and standard operating procedures. Have a team in place that's not relying on you as the owner. Have your financials solid so that everything's clean on your profit and loss statements. Hire a bookkeeper so that your books are up to date at all times. Make sure that you are maximizing profits. Make sure you're up to date on your taxes. Make sure that you don't incur too much debt. Just run your business as clean and lean and profitable as possible, without having to, as the main owner and content creator, without having to work 60 hours a week in it. If you can accomplish all those, then you'll be doing great.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much for walking us through all the process. I really learned a ton from from this
Absolutely. Thank you
discussion.
for inviting me. It was my pleasure to share. And if anybody has any other questions, they can feel free to reach out to me. I'm very active on LinkedIn, and you can find me there at Marty Fahncke. I have a very unique name. I'm the only Marty Fahncke in the world,
I
and that's
wish I could
spelled
say the same.
Marty, and the last name is Fahncke. And so I'm easy to find. You can Google me, you can find me on LinkedIn, or my website for acquisitions is westboundroad.com. And you can go to westboundroad.com and check out some of the content there. And then if you want to reach out to me through our contact form on that website, I'd be happy to help you however I can.
Do you have any lead magnets that you think would be beneficial to my audience?
Right now, well, we do offer a free business valuation, and that's a $1,500 value. And if they go to the website, they'll see that.
Yeah, okay, please. Yeah, they'll definitely grab that opportunity to evaluate their business. Before we go, any last words for my listeners?
Well, you've done a great job of extracting lots of information out of me. I can't think of too many other nuggets of wisdom. I would just say that, I touched on this earlier, but I'll touch on it again because I think it's really, really important. There's a book out there called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and if you haven't read it, I highly recommend you do. One of the habits is begin with the end in mind. Another way of putting that is, you can't reach a goal without knowing what your destination is. So
Yeah,
always look at, having your content business, what's the end goal for that business? What is your goal? Is, are you going to create that content and be out there writing stuff or shooting videos or doing whatever for forever? Probably not. So at what point do you want to move on from that business, and under what terms do you want to move on from that business, and begin now to make plans and preparations for that? Otherwise, you're just going to keep doing the same thing day in and day out until you burn out. And then you're just going to walk away from the business and get nothing for it because you're tired of it and burned out. So have a plan, begin with the end in mind, and then work that plan.
yeah. Thank you so much for that. One more time before we go. Where can listeners learn more and connect to you? I know you shared it before, but yeah.
Yeah, westboundroad.com is my website. And then my name is Marty Fahncke. That's Marty. Last name is Fahncke. And you can Google me or look me up on LinkedIn, and you can reach out to me that way.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I sincerely appreciate that. And I know because I got a lot of value, my audience will get a lot of value from this episode.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I don't know what the time is there. Is it morning or night? So I say
It's
have a great night.
10 o'clock at night here.
Okay, have a great night. It's 3:48 a.m. over here. So mine will be have a good day.
Yeah. Good morning to you. Good night to me. And
Yeah,
have a good one, everyone. All right. Thank you.
yeah. Thank you so much. Bye bye. Thanks again for coming on the podcast.
All
I
right.
really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks for having me. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Wisdom Journey, the podcast for content creators. If this episode sparked ideas, subscribe and leave a review. Share it with a fellow creator who might benefit. Check the show notes for links and resources. If you'd like to support the show, buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/wisdomhq. Follow us on social media to stay connected. Until next time, keep creating and seeking wisdom in your journey.